Welcome in, Anita on the Mark. Of course, I'm Anita Marks. He's Nevin Shapiro. We've been with you throughout the P. Diddy trial, and we've decided today we're going to go live. Why? We want the listeners, the viewers out there to have a say, have a platform, be able to communicate, chime in with us. We read all the message boards, we comment, we respond, but we're going to be with you for the next hour or so, talking about everything that has transpired so far and giving you a platform and an opportunity to comment. If you've got questions, all the things, we are here for it. You ready, Nevin?
Love it. Can't wait, Anita. Been excited for this.
Again, if you're just tuning in for the first time, Nevin Shapiro, we went to college together at University of South Florida. Go Bulls. Nevin, unfortunately, spent some time in jail, 10 years to be exact, and experienced a lot of the same ordeal, emotions, experiences that P. Diddy is going through right now, albeit a totally different crime, to say the least. But nonetheless, that's what he brings to the table. I'm the point guard, and each and every show, we've got a phenomenal guest who joins us, from prosecuting attorneys to defense attorneys to FBI agents. And today we're circling back to our first guest when we first launched, and that's Cathy Fleming, defense attorney, defending corporations, individuals for more than 44 years, a trial lawyer with more than 80 cases that she has tried in federal court, and a very good friend of mine, my golfing buddy as well. So Cathy, great to have you back on the program with us. How you doing, my friend?
Doing great, Anita. How about you?
I'm great. I'm so intrigued by this trial, and it's not about the freak offs. It's not about the baby oil for me. It's more about really the competition here that's happening between the prosecutors and the defense team. And obviously, really the big storyline is, has the prosecution proven racketeering? And that's what we've been hearing time and time again. And we're going to dive into all of that. Again, for those that are watching, comments, questions, put them up on the message board. We will address as many as possible. So please, this show is really, we're going live so that you can be a part of it. But Cathy, first and foremost, again, it's been a minute since you've been on. This is episode, I want to say 9 or 10 for us. You were on episode 1. So it's been a minute since we've spoken to you since the trial began. With that being said, I'm sure you've been following it. Where do you think it stands right now in regard to how well the prosecution has done and the defense?
Well, it's a little hard to evaluate when you're not in the courtroom, because my experience is the press really doesn't get it right. And of course, in federal court, there's no cameras, so you have to rely either on the live tweeting or you have to rely on the news stories. Uh, as a defense, and I've been on both sides, I was a prosecutor and a defense attorney. At the end of the prosecution's case, if you're a prosecutor, you want to be way ahead of everybody. If you're on the defense side and you're just even at the end of the prosecutor's case, you're really feeling good. And the problem is, you've got a jury, and you don't know what the prosecution's got to convince 12, the defense has to convince 1. And you don't know what they're focusing on, what they're enjoying, not enjoying, thinking it's horrible, thinking it's really domestic violence, but it's not trafficking. Until the end of the case and until they deliberate, it's really hard to make a call or a prediction. I have a former partner who used to say, you don't get rich betting on juries. And he's right. It's really hard to know what the jury's going to do. I've watched it. I think the defense has done a good job at poking holes, which is what their job is. In a perfect case, if you're a defense attorney, you don't put any defense on, because you're able to say to the jury, I don't need to. They didn't prove their case, and we're not going to waste any more of your time. I understand they're putting on a couple of witnesses or a few days worth of witnesses. That's always risky, because if somebody on the jury says, well, the sheer volume, the prosecutors had this and they only have this, that could work against you. On the other hand, if you've got a couple of exceptional defense witnesses that can knock even more holes and create some reasonable doubt, that helps. So the bottom line to your answer is, I don't know if they've proven it or not.
That's a great point, Anita. If I can chime in, first of all, what Cathy says to start with, not being able to watch, and you're relying on the Johnny Cochrans of social media to give you the blow by blow. every day. And like, that's where we're relying on our information, other than, I would assume, TMZ, which would probably get it as close to right as you can, I would assume. Cathy's dead on that. We're not watching. We're not watching the it's like you take a text message from somebody and you misinterpret the whole tone and tenor of the text when it really wasn't so serious. And that's what we're not getting live being there. Following up towards the end of what she said, that makes a lot of sense, as far as a defense wouldn't spend a lot of time. And we're hearing that Diddy's defense is going to close in short order. And that plays in exactly what Cathy just said, is we don't think you've proven your end of it. And that's exactly how I interpret Diddy's defense team's message.
The biggest question is he going to testify? And that truly is not a decision that's made by a defense team until literally the last minute. You're discussing it from the first day the client meets with you to talk about the case. And I'm a big believer that despite the fact you get a jury instruction that says you may not take anything or accept any inference out of the fact that a defendant chooses not to testify, he has every right not to testify. I believe jurors do hold it against people who don't. And so I think that if to the whenever I have a client who's able to testify and can credibly explain things away, I always think it's better for them to look the jury in the eye and say, I did not do this. So it's a tough call. There's so much that's been here, all of these videos, etc. If the defense thinks they've done a really good job of neutralizing it, they may say, we're not going to risk him falling apart on the stand or doing something stupid. To me, it's always up to the client himself to decide, do I want to or not, with my advice, because it's their life on the line.
Well,
And I think with the short defense, predicting only a couple days, I don't think he's testifying.
That's a
yes,
great point.
I agree with you. Before we get into that, I think the racketeering, to me, is the biggest storyline here. And for those that are watching, and myself, when this trial began, if you recall, Cathy, I even asked you, I was like, explain racketeering, right? Racketeering is the participation in an illegal scheme under the Racketeering Influenced Corrupt Organization Statute. Coerced victims, some of who say they were sex workers, through intimidation and narcotics, and participated in sometimes days-long sex performances that federal prosecutors allege. And of course, they showed the video. Sex trafficking, transporting people in order to engage in prostitution, tickets purchased by Diddy's account, treating his girlfriends as sex workers. So let's start right there. I do believe, Cathy, that the prosecution in the testimony with the witnesses and you know, the gentleman, I forget his name, who handles all the accounts and whatnot, they have proven RICO. Agree or disagree between the three of us? I do believe the prosecution has proven racketeering. Are we all on the same page there?
No. First of all, I think you have to have the whole trial. The jury is instructed you have to listen to all the evidence before you can determine what's been proven. If you're saying you think they have made out a prima facie case of the elements they have to prove, you may have a point. I'm not sure I'm even there yet. I think that a reasonable jury could find that these were willing participants and not people who were trafficked, based on what I'm reading. You know, I see the comments, and I understand the treatment of some of these people was really not what I would ever want, you know, for me to be treated, and people I'd probably go commit homicide if they treated my daughter that way. But it's you know, but it's somebody's being a willing participant. That's going to be something a jury has to decide. RICO is not that hard. I mean, RICO really is simply that there's some form of organization or enterprise that does a series, a pattern of bad acts, and it can be as few as two. So it's not that RICO is magic. It was designed to root out organized crime, and it's been put in lots of other cases, including civil cases, to show organizations that engage in various frauds or other predicate acts. But so I don't think the RICO has the magic of it. To me, the issue is, after we hear all the evidence, will they have shown enough elements of the case that they make it to the jury, because remember, at the end of the prosecution's case, the defense is going to make a motion to dismiss under something called Rule 29 that's going to say, as a matter of law, the prosecutor has not proven prima facie cases on all these elements. But if they make it to the jury, you have to listen to all the evidence and determine whether it's right or not. I don't think you really should make your mind up until you hear the whole case.
Nevin, thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
I'm in agreement with that statement. I can't say that that they've proven RICO, and of course we haven't heard, like, we're not really hearing all the details and everything else. I think a really big component of potentially proving the RICO is this Christina Quorum. Not to jump ahead, but Diddy's Ghislaine Maxwell per se. I think she holds a huge role in proving this RICO. That's my position on this. This is I've always thought it was a tough RICO case to prove. I'm not so sure they don't catch him on the other ones, the other charges. The RICO, I can't say I'm there just yet as well. And I do agree with Cathy that you have to hear all the evidence. You don't know who that one trickle of information is going to sway you.
So Cathy, just circling back and in regard to the witnesses that have testified, and what the defense has done here is showing endless text messages, voicemails, and whatnot, that all three of them were eager participants in these hotel nights or freak-offs, and that really has been their stance. But the opposition then is, well, you've got Diddy, who's paying $10,000 a month for their residency. He's in total control of their career. They had to behave this way in order to make him happy. Where does that all stand in regard to how you feel that the jury is viewing this?
Well, I really don't. I mean, if the jury's listening to the judge's instructions, they still haven't decided what to believe yet. And I do think most jurors, despite the evidence that says that they make up their minds in the opening statement, 65%, I do think if they're listening to everything, it's a tough case because, you know, let's put it on easy terms. People go to work at jobs they don't like. Why? Because they get paid to go to them. I don't mean to trivialize this at all. These are serious charges. But, you know, there is an answer of could they have gotten away if they really were being treated badly? And I'm not suggesting that victims should always be able to get away. They can't. But you're talking about people that really had a position of privilege and they could go to the press if they needed to. They had outlets. They had the money to get out if they wanted to. That goes in favor of what the defense is saying here, which is, you know, they're willing participants, and the Monday morning regret of what happened is really coloring what happened here. On the other side of it, the prosecution's done a pretty good job of showing that these people felt trapped and they felt that they couldn't get out and that it's not victimless, that they went through all of this. I honestly don't know where I come out on it. I think one of the problems prosecutors have is frequently they overcharge cases, and they may well have overcharged this. I'm not sure if it's sex trafficking, you know, paying people for purposes of prostitution, rather than being generous to people who are willing participants in freak-offs.
Boy, is that a good point. I mean, that really says a lot. You know, Anita, Cathy's explanation, like, if we're all voting to see if this guy's guilty of being a despicable human being, I think this is a unanimous slam dunk. But as far as convicting somebody on a RICO case, like, you're destroying somebody's life, not that he didn't do damage, but they may have been willing participants. The same situation applies. The only reason why I feel very strongly about the prosecution's case is because I'm a numbers guy, and 97% of the time they're right. Maybe they're not right. They win.
You're talking about the federal government.
Yes. And I have a very, very hard time going against that number. You're betting on a real long shot when you bet on anybody, Sean Combs or Nevin Shapiro or whoever is sitting in that chair. Would you not agree with that, Cathy?
I do, but we've talked about this in the past. He's lucky enough to have the resources to
Sure.
even up the odds a little bit more. He not
Yes.
only has the money to hire the best lawyers, he's got a dream team that's terrific, and to have all the forensic investigators. A lot of the cross examination was really coming up with stuff that investigators dug up. But he also is a celebrity, and that does affect things. People do look at celebrities differently than they do regular human beings. I think you're right. I think if everyone wanted to say, "Do you want your daughter to date this guy?" I think it's a resounding no. I really don't. This is not somebody I. This isn't somebody I want at my house in the Hamptons for the summer. But the amount of damage. I want to know what the $50,000 worth of damage in a hotel room is. I mean, what do you have to do to cause $50,000 worth of damage in a penthouse hotel suite? But it's that's very different than convicting someone of sex trafficking. And when prosecutors bring cases, they bring multiple charges. At sentencing, it gets grouped together for purposes of sentencing under the guidelines. But they don't care if they lose a couple of counts. As long as they convict on one, they're fine. If they've gotten a conviction, they've gotten a conviction. Whereas, a lot of times juries, if they can't agree, will split the difference and they'll do a compromise verdict. I've had verdicts that made no sense because somebody was found guilty on crime A and not guilty on crime B, and you just can't even understand why a jury would go that way. But sometimes it's as simple as the jury doesn't agree, so this is their compromise.
Yeah.
Again, I just want to remind folks, we are live. This is the first time that we're doing this show live, and a big reason why is for our viewers who are watching, your opportunity to comment. If you've got a question, listen, Cathy Fleming, I'm not just saying this because she's a dear friend of mine, but she's one of the best in the business. And we've been live now for 17 minutes. I think it's evident just how brilliant she is. So you've got any really substantial questions in regard to what Diddy's going through in this trial, now's the time to pose those questions for her. That's an understatement. Nevin, earlier you mentioned Christina Karam. And that is Diddy's chief of staff, aka the Maxwell, the what do you call her? I'm sorry, Galen Maxwell, right? To Diddy. Now, interesting, and Cathy, assuming that you know who she is, surprise. Well, first of all, Nevin, talk about how surprised we both are that she has not been a part of the prosecution's witness group. Explain why that's such a surprise for us.
I think she's made it clear that she doesn't want to testify, and I think I surmise she would be a very hostile witness against the prosecution, and as an unwilling participant to assist the government. I think if Diddy were to be charged, she is going to follow, and they will be going after her. I would almost say no questions in my mind.
So Cathy, pretty much what's been pointed out in trial is, several text messages instructing employees to bring Diddy drugs, especially when he's traveling, and also was a really crucial part of going to the hotel and making sure that Diddy got the video so that it would not be released with what happened with Cassie. Thoughts, and folks are calling her KK. Thoughts on KK not being a part of the prosecution's witness list, and if Diddy is found guilty, do you see the federal government going after her as a co-conspirator?
Well, in terms of calling her as a witness, the government, I'm sure, any lawyer who's good, looks at what the positives and the negatives are. And you don't need to, even if you think the person should be a great witness, and even if you think you can put them on if they haven't been in a grand jury or they haven't been interviewed or they haven't done a proffer, you still have to weigh what could come out that could be exculpatory, what could help Diddy, and whether you want to risk that at trial or not risk that at trial. They certainly haven't given her immunity. At least it's not public if she had. And if she'd had immunity, I suspect they would have put her on the chance. They would have put her on the stand. I don't know if they convict Diddy, whether they're going to go after her or not. It's really, Diddy's the big show here. We don't know what all the evidence, there may be evidence of all sorts of things that we don't know about. It would make sense. Frequently, the prosecutors do it, particularly if they've had somebody who's been a difficult potential witness. They can go after them to try to put some squeeze on them. But I really don't know enough about it to know why they're making the decisions they're making. I do know that if you think you've got a strong case, you don't need to throw a wild card in there to see if it's going to help the defense.
Cat Mid says, I think it's more about where he got the money from to pay for these hotel nights. That makes it a RICO charge. And again, the gentleman who handles his accounting, has proven that a number of the funds that he was able to use for the hotels and the travel for the prostitutes and whatnot came from his own personal accounts.
Well, I think that also part of what they've done with the accountant is that they need to show that it affects interstate commerce. And so one of the things that the prosecution has done is they've shown the elements of why these funds and why other things that happened in the case affected interstate commerce. That is an element of RICO.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's just a question of the money. You still have to show there was an enterprise that was carrying on a pattern of racketeering, and there were two predicate acts that were used in connection with RICO, and it affected interstate commerce.
Guys, here's some more coming in. Jennifer Safran is saying, it seems that the witnesses participated in the freak-offs and hotel nights willingly. How is this prosecution going to get around this? We touched on this a second ago, Cathy, but if you could answer that.
Well, I think the testimony from the victims or participants, depending on your point of view, was that they felt coerced and they felt they didn't have a choice. And so I think what the government is going to do is argue that it has nothing to do with, they really weren't willing participants. They were really coerced into doing it and they didn't have a choice in it. And they've tried to put as much evidence together as they can to show that.
And I think, Anita, also that now you're really trying to get into the heads of other people. Were they willingly, or did they feel? Now you're bringing in psychiatrists to analyze, as expert witnesses. Were they victim? I think it really is a very difficult case to prove. I've always felt that way. That's why I said at the beginning, it's a 50-50 thing, and it really gets down to the jury. Well,
let's talk about the jury, because there's a lot of jury issues that have just transpired, and really a big reason why I wanted you on with us today, Cathy. Juror number 6 was dismissed due to quote unquote lack of candor. Had communicated that he lived in the Bronx in the area of New York, but more recently told a court staffer that he had moved in with his girlfriend in New Jersey. And there were apparently several inconsistencies between the jurors' answers in court transcripts, where it suggested that he had a desire to be deceptive in an effort to get on the jury. So therefore, he was dismissed. Your thoughts on that transpiring, Cathy?
Well, here's the judge's nightmare, and the prosecution doesn't like it either. The defense likes it. Anytime there's a problem with the jury, it's helpful, because if you get down to a certain number, they have to have enough alternates to get through it. But when there are lots of cases where people.
I think we just lost your audio, Cathy. Nevin, can you hear her?
No.
Cathy, we just lost your audio. She can't. Do me a favor, Lazo, our producer, if you could call Cathy and let her know that we lost her audio. That would be great. So again, let's talk about jury number 6 and him being dismissed. The alternate that comes in is now keep in mind the jury 6 that was dismissed was an African American male. Obviously, Diddy on the on trial, the jury, you want to be judged by a jury of your peers, right? And those that are more like you. The alternate is a 57-year-old architect from Westchester, a white man, master's degree in mechanical engineering, enjoys hiking, biking, and is a fan of the Mets. So that's who's replaced here. The defense is not happy with the replacement, with the alternate number one. But nonetheless, you and I have been talking about this juror number 6 for quite a while now, and this just came down the pike this week.
Yeah, we called it. We called it when we heard it. I think this benefits Diddy, in all honesty, because I think this is just really setting up for a major appellate situation for him if he were to be convicted. There's numerous. This is a it's a high celebrity case. I mean, it's like sort of like an unprecedented, it's an O.J. Simpson type case, except that was in state court. So you're able to watch, every, move. I think this benefits Diddy, in all honesty. I think there's a lot of drama that's beginning to unfold. And from what we hear, there's another juror that's on the chop.
Well, actually, there's 2 more situations with jurors, but I just got a text message from Cathy. From what I understand, Lazo, she's ready to come back in. So if we could bring her back in, that's great.
Yeah, and she'd be best served to answer these specific.
There we go. Cathy, you good? Cathy, can you hear us? We could hear you.
Anita, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Yeah.
So again, listen, this is what happens when you go live. You're risking technical difficulty. So she just needs to make sure that she can get that audio back up and running again so she can hear us. So it's not just juror number 6. There are apparently 2 other issues with jurors. Apparently there's another juror, and I don't know what juror number that is, who received a text message from an unknown number asking if they were juror number 6.
Yeah.
So that happened.
Yeah, the judge snapped. Because they're not obeying his.
Well, no. That's separate. That's separate. And then there's another juror, and that's juror number 7, who apparently has been texting with a coworker about the case.
Oh, that's who I was referring to.
Yes. So the judge is very upset that information about the jurors and also the judge is very upset that the information about the jurors were leaked out. Either the prosecution or the defense team leaked that information to the media, and so the judge threatened to hold the attorneys in contempt if that happened again. But you've got now 3 jurors that have some type of issue that they're and I said this from the beginning, like I was surprised that this group of jurors weren't sequestered.
I was surprised also. Like, how do you keep something like this under lid? It's crazy. This is a massive circus, this case, right? It just is. This trial, it's a massive circus. Why they're not sequestered was surprising to me to begin with. And that's another reason why, like, I always said it from even before we started doing this. Remember, I was telling you, I said the fact that he didn't get bail was a really, like, I think he'd be way ahead of this curve right now had he gotten bail. That's the truth. I really do.
That you feel that if he would have been granted bail and he was out, you feel that this would be a whole different scenario for him, right?
I really do. Yeah. And I know that based on what I went through in my own, major part of the value of you having me on is I've been down this road. Not we're going to trial, but at least defending myself while stuck inside as opposed to being out like the way I'm talking to you right now. It is a huge obstacle. It is a huge handicap to not be out and defending yourself. Working with your attorneys just in itself.
Well, that was another thing. We've talked about this before, and here we go. We've got Cathy back. Cathy, can you hear us? You good? Cathy, can you hear us?
Anita, I did learn sign language when I was inside.
No, I took sign language as a foreign language. Cathy, are you good? Can you hear us? And no. um, so real quick, let's talk about what happened today, because not a lot happened today, right? Did you hear this, that one of the jurors had vertigo?
I did. That's what cut my day short on doing my research. Yes. He had vertigo, and that was it. No case. So I was just picking up from where we ended yesterday.
So apparently today, former employee Brendan Paul was expected to take the stand, and he agreed to a plea deal to avoid prison. Of course, that's that Fifth Amendment, the right against self-incrimination, and given an immunity order. And he was Combs' mule, accused of transporting and distributing ecstasy, cocaine, marijuana, mushrooms, a number of substances, whenever Diddy did travel.
Yeah,
so,
now he's going to become the government's mule. So that's how that works, right? So no immune. He's I'm sure he's been given immunity, and it's he's gonna that's it. He's gonna say whatever he knows.
And obviously, again, I think a really big cog in the case for the prosecution to prove the racketeering in regard to him and transporting all the drugs that Diddy used for these freak offs and these hotel nights.
We said from the beginning, Anita, like, remember I said when we first started this, I said, the ebbs and flows of this thing, someone's going to get the lead, someone's going to come back. This is how it's going to go back and forth. I got so caught up in like being disgusted about what kind of, human being Diddy is. But then as I really start just taking off, those goggles and really just looking at the case itself, I find myself on the fence. I don't know if they've proven their case. Like, I don't know if they've proven a RICO. And I read a lot of the commentary and everything else. And I don't like to really rely on that. I just do the best I can to read through the lines, like what you're reading, right? We're just the viewing public without viewing. And I think, man, this is a Hail Mary either way. I just think it's a 50-50 situation. And Cathy actually made me realize it's not a 96%, 97% conviction rate, because the typical 96, 97% conviction rate doesn't have a couple $100 million to spend on legal defense. And that was a real good correction she made, because I got caught up in the numbers, and she's right. He's got endless bank to keep fighting this.
I think Cathy is good. Let's try one more time. So let's bring Cathy on. Cathy, can you hear us? Are you good? Cathy, can you hear us? I guess not. Unfortunately, I know she's got such great information to share, but unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties with her. So again, the trial was supposed to continue today with the former employee Brendan Paul taking the stand. That did not happen, unfortunately, because one of the jurors had vertigo. Tomorrow, they have off because of the holiday, Juneteenth. So they'll be back in court on Friday, and the prosecution is expected to rest their case on Friday. The defense has come out, and we touched on this a little bit with Cathy, saying that they're only going to need 2 to 5 days to I guess state their case. They're going to call maybe 3 witnesses, 2 former employees of Diddy's to the stand. And because they're saying that it's only going to take 2 to 5 days, the expectation is that Diddy will not take the stand, that Diddy will not that he will not testify. That's what the expectation is.
He could open up Pandora's box that could just bury him. And I think that it's better served for him, for the jury, not to hear anything he says, honestly, because I think as a human being, he's a total zero. As a defendant in his own case, he still has a real chance. And so he's probably better served not speaking. And I would be very, very, I'd be stunned if he testified. Stunned.
Yeah, and it does not seem like Cathy Fleming, again, the attorney who was on with us, and again, we apologize for the technical issues that we're having today, but nonetheless, we still got a lot of really good information from her. This is our first time going live with the broadcast. We thanks for your audience participation. If you missed any part of this program, it will be posted on YouTube, on X. You'll be able to watch it as well. And again, hopefully everybody has a great holiday tomorrow. Court back in session on Friday. Nevin and I will have another show coming your way next week. Nevin, final thoughts before we sign off.
Yeah. So, you had sent me a couple things about, like, if convicted, what do you think his timeline would be, the pardon situation potential and stuff like that. I think if, Anita, just jumping ahead, if he were to be convicted, I think he's going to get a lot of time. The appeal, if he were to lose, I think his appeal is for certain. It's imminent. They're going to appeal immediately if he were to lose. But by Independence Day, he may have his independence anyway. Right? He's got a lot to hide in. This is a long week for him to not be in court. Trust me, he's dying inside. I promise you.
One thing I do want to ask you this before we sign off, and again, it doesn't, and I know it was very short-lived, unfortunately, having Cathy Fleming on with us, but it doesn't seem to me that she feels that the prosecution really has done a great job proving racketeering. We'll see what happens, but let's just say, hypothetically speaking, Nevin, he does get convicted. You were inside for 10 years. Yeah. I guess my question to you is, where do you think, if he does get convicted, you're saying you think he's going to go away for quite a while. All right. Are we trying Cathy one more time? Cathy, can you hear us? I don't think so. Cathy, can you hear us? So let's end on this. Where do you think he goes? You know the landscape. You were in a variety of different
Yeah, more than 5.
Right?
Institutions, yes. If he were to get convicted, he'll certainly get more than 10 years. If you get over 20 years, you go to a medium security prison. I believe that would be his sentence if he were to be convicted, because he went to trial. I believe he would end up, and it's ironic, but there's very few places in the federal system that would suit someone of Puffy's where he's coming from, being a big celebrity, very wealthy, this and that. I believe he would end up in the same place R. Kelly's at, which is Butner, the medium 1. Reason being, he would have too much time to be at a low security prison. He would probably get 20 plus. Secondly, he wouldn't go to what they call the medium 2 in Butner, which is the Deuce. And there's a lot of activity there at the Deuce activity. And he would end up at the medium 1 where R. Kelly is, and that's where Bernie Madoff was. And the reason being is because there's guys there that are going to do life and are doing life and extensive prison sentences. And there's a fence over the top of the yard so no one could break out, and it's decent living if you have to be inside. And I think that's really where he would end up. So him and R. Kelly would be potentially bunkmates.
Well, you heard what happened with R. Kelly today, right?
Yes.
So he's actually he's in a hospital right now trying to recover from a potential drug overdose.
Yeah, and that's another story. But and I have my thoughts on that as well. But I think Diddy, that's where would be the most likely landing spot for him. That's really where I think he would go.
Cat Mid is saying Diddy has the biggest ego. I can't see him not testifying. I'm sure he would like to take the stand and state his case. But again, he's paying a ton of money for arguably one of the best defense teams maybe in the history of
Yeah.
defense teams, and if they're going to tell him no, it would not be advantageous for you to testify, he should listen to them. That's for sure.
This isn't like betting on the Super Bowl, Anita. It's all or nothing. Like, you're going away. This guy's he'll be out if he even gets out. He's going to be gone for a long time if he were to get convicted. He can't testify. The dice are heavy dice on that roll. No way.
But I mean, but just out of curiosity, based on the comment that we got from one of our viewers, and I mean, yeah, I mean, it's evident if you've been following this case. Yes, he does have a tremendous ego. Do you is it I guess not big enough where he's not going to listen? Is it too big where he's not going to listen to his defense team?
He's going to listen.
Yeah, I agree with you again, considering that we're being told that it's their case to state their case is only going to be 2 to 5 days because of that.
It's going to be must-see TV.
Here's another comment. Yes, I agree. I don't see it as a RICO case. I see him more of a domestic violence case. I mean, that's just my opinion, and that I see him walking out of the courtroom with this. Will be interesting to see how it all plays out. Again, they're off tomorrow because of the holiday, back in court on Friday. Hopefully that juror is resolved the vertigo issue. And then the prosecution is going to rest their case. And then starting the following week is when the defense will state their case. And again, it should only take 2 to 5 days. And we will be back in action with you next week. I don't know. I'm willing to try it live again. Hopefully we won't have as many technical issues.
Yeah, it happens. Listen, this is.
But I like doing a live show. Yeah. Wait, one last time. Do we have Cathy? One last time.
I'm back. I've heard the whole show, but my sound was not working. I apologize.
No, hey, listen, shit happens, Cathy. It's all good. It's not your fault. Really quick, because we've got maybe about 10 minutes left. Okay. I know we lost you while we were talking about the jury issue. So jury number 6 is dismissed. I know you had commented on that. There was another juror that got a text message from an unknown number asking if that juror was juror number 6. And then juror number 7 has been texting with coworkers about the case. On top of that, the judge is upset because all this information got leaked, and it was leaked either from the prosecution or the defense team. And so he threatened to hold them in contempt. So kind of put a big kind of like, I know it's a big net in regard to all that's been happening here, but is this the norm? Is this out of the norm in regard to what happens in trials?
I actually think it happens more than we ever find out. There are very strict instructions, and generally in a high-profile case, the judge every day will remind everyone, don't read the papers, don't talk about the case. You're given an instruction daily. Until you have heard all the evidence, don't discuss the case, even with the other jurors. You need to hear everything before you start deliberating and making decisions in the case. As a defense lawyer, I'm jumping up and down with joy that there are problems with my jurors, because if a juror has not followed the instructions of the judge that you shouldn't be texting, you shouldn't be talking about the case, then the presumption is that they can't follow the instructions to follow the law, etc. And, again, I don't remember how many alternates they have here, but you could also make an argument that they're tainting the rest of the jury. If they're not following that instruction, what other instruction are they not following? So it gives you good appeal issues if one comes. And remember, the prosecution has to convince 12 and get a guilty verdict for them to have a win. For the defense, one person who says not guilty, even if there's 11 who say guilty, that hangs the jury, that's a win for the defense. A mistrial, which is what a hung jury is when they can't agree, is a win. So if you've got jurors out there not following the judge's instructions and you can prove it, that's one step up on you had a bad trial and a bad jury. In terms of who leaked the information, I'd be surprised, candidly, if the lawyers on either side were the ones who leaked the information. There's too much at stake here. And, people care about their licenses and their reputations and their camaraderie and professionalism. And I'd be very surprised if it was the lawyers. The people who are watching this case and the press are getting copies of transcripts. There are other people who see this, court reporters, and I'm certainly not accusing the court reporter of leaking, but there are other places it could have been, and including the judge's own chambers. And again, I'm not accusing anybody. I think people really do try to do their job and not violate what the instructions of the judge are. But as a bottom line, if you've got two jurors that already have problems, one's been dismissed over the objection of the defense. Now you've got another one not following instructions. So if I'm a defense lawyer or I'm a prosecutor, I have to say this person should be dismissed. They didn't follow your instructions, and we have to question judge the rest of the jury to see if they've been tainted by these actions. Have they followed your instructions? Has anyone else violated your instructions? It's good. It's a good appeal issue.
I was just going to say, if he is found guilty, can we just assume that they're going to appeal?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
One of the people on his team is one of the best appellate lawyers in the country. Her name's Alexandra Shapiro. She's fantastic. And, I'm sure she's part of the team, not only because she's a very talented lawyer at the trial level, but she also is watching for the appellate issues as this case is being tried.
And give us that timeline, Cathy, in regard to, let's just say, hypothetically speaking. Well, let's give the timeline right now, right?
All right. So there's two things that happen. The jury comes back with a verdict, right? You have a certain number of days, I think it's 14 off the top of my head, to make a motion for a new trial. And we talked earlier today about at the end of the prosecution's case, the defense is going to make a motion under Rule 29 to dismiss as a matter of law because the jury didn't prove certain elements. They're rarely granted. They're not supposed to be reserved, but they can be. And a lot of times judges reserve if they think there's some benefit to it. You get to put your case on, and then they can decide at the end of the case whether they should have granted the Rule 29. But in any event, if he denies the Rule 29, if the judge denies the Rule 29 and then it goes forward, you have a certain number of days at the end after the verdict to file a motion for a new trial. And if you have new evidence or there was the law wasn't followed, there are certain standards for it. Then after sentencing in the case, you have, I believe it's 14 days to file a notice of appeal. It may be 10. I'm just not remembering off the top of my head. I do it the day of sentencing. I filed the notice of appeal for a client because it's jurisdictional and you don't want to miss the time. And whether you're going to perfect the appeal or not, you're going to file a notice of appeal to make sure you have the option while you figure out whether you've got decent issues or not. In his case, if he's convicted, the only thing that is at risk is money. And what good is his money doing him if he's in a prison? So I have no doubt there will be an appeal in the case. Whether it will be successful, we don't know. But we don't know if there's a verdict yet.
So if there is an appeal, again, he's not been issued the ability to bond to get out of jail. What is the time frame between that and a new case starting again? How much time is he going to stay in jail if a new trial is set?
Well,
no, it was such an important question, Nevin.
I can basically answer it. If there's so many if-then scenarios with what's going to happen. Well, I think what you're asking is like, what is the time if, how long would it take if he's convicted? How long will it take for them to get an appeal going?
I guess my question to her was, what would be the timeline? He's been denied bail. What would be the timeline that he would sit in jail to wait for a new trial? Typically, what is that timeline?
Yeah, that is well, he's got different money, so they're going to be working a little bit faster than a public defender would, or even normal private counsel. I don't even have the answer to that.
I know we're jumping the gun here. I wasn't
afforded that luxury. I just know that my appeal took a minute. So, but this is a different type of case. I was waiting for her answer.
I know. And again, unfortunate that that we lost her right when she was about to give it. Anyway, Nevin, always great hosting these shows with you, and Cathy. Cathy's just tremendous. Again, we apologize for the technical difficulties, but this is what happens when we go live. Again, if you missed any part of the program, it will be up and running on our YouTube channel, as well as the short clips that we're going to edit for you, and we'll put them on X, and we'll put them on Instagram and all the things. And we will be back next week. We'll decide. Listen, I'm willing to give live another shot, Nevin, if you are. I dig this. I like it. And I like the audience participation in regard to the questions and the comments. So I'm game to do this again if you are.
Yeah, of course. I'll do whatever. So you say jump. You say jump. I'll say how high.
I love it. I love it. All right, Nevin, appreciate you, and appreciate everybody again for subscribing, listening, watching, viewing, your comments, all the things. We so appreciate it. Hopefully we are making you more, I guess, wise, more intelligent in regard to all that is developing in this Diddy trial. That's what we're here for. So have a great night, everybody.